Welcome to my quick overview of the 3D pipeline from sculpting to topology and texturing and finally rendering. Now a quick heads up, I will use ZBrush for the sculpting, Maya and Blender for the retopology and rendering, and Substance for texturing. This video won't go in depth with everything, but I think it will serve to get you adjusted to the process. Okay, let's get started. So first up we have the sculpting part. Now for this tutorial I'm using my Cam and Rob caricature, but obviously you can use whichever organic mesh you want to follow along with. Now hard surface stuff can be slightly different, but I'll mention that as we go. But for this video it will mainly cover organic stuff. Now I normally start off with a template mesh, but given that this is so exaggerated, I'll start off with the crusty sphere and sculpt from there. For the sculpting part, I will go through the process in bits and pieces, but I won't show the entire sculpting process as this isn't really what the tutorial is for, and also I have quite a few videos covering full sculpts and YouTube has quite a few as well, so you can check those out. Alright, so after you're done sculpting, up next we have retopology, and before we dive into that, let's have a quick look at what makes great or good topology. Now people will give you a bunch of thoughts, opinions and ideas here, but really the simplest way to ID good topology is if it works for the intended purpose or purposes, and that's it. Good topology is any topology that works for its intended purpose or purposes. That's it, you don't have to go beyond that to make it perfect, it doesn't make any sense to do so. To sort this out, you can ask yourself some of these questions. Does it have triangles? Yes or no? Is it being used for animation? Yes or no? Insert other relevant questions here. Yes or no? But does it still work for what you need it to? Yes. If no, then this is the loop you'll run through until you can answer yes to the last question. Does it work for what you need it to? And there's the golden rule. There's no need to make the topology perfect. It's a waste of time and effort. Just make it work for what it needs to work for. That is it. So now that we have that out of the way, what are the ways we can retopologize this piece? Well, given that I only need to render it but also use it as a portfolio piece and not show great topology, I have quite a few options here, so let's go through them really quickly. By the way, I've already written an article on this whole process, links below if you prefer that format. It's a little bit less detailed though. The first and quickest, but also probably the worst way, would be to decimate your mesh. Decimation refers to taking the mesh and drastically reducing the polygon count while using triangles. Now this is really your quickest but also most problematic option. Instead of this, I'd rather use the next option, which can take a little more time but is just cleaner and better overall. The next option is to use the automatic remeshes. Now most 3D programs have this, and luckily for us, ZBrush's one is pretty decent. Here I'll set the count to something not too high and remesh while hoping for the best. You can also use Z remesh guides to guide the loops in a particular direction for better loops, and really this is the reason as to why remesher is better for retopology. The mesh is far more readable for us and it's way easier to unwrap. The last option is probably the most used in production, but also the longest and most frustrating to do. But the upside is that it can be customized and used in a multitude of applications. Animating a decimator mesh is probably never going to work, while remeshed meshes usually have too high of a polygon count for polygon budgets, and that's why people will use this method. I'm personally not using it for my mesh, but here's a quick overview of the process in Maya. So for those of you who aren't familiar with retopology, you will take a relatively low polygon version of the mesh you want to retopologize, preferably decimated, but to a point where you can still see the details, and then import that into Maya or whatever program you're using as a template. After that, I will make sure to make the mesh a live object by clicking on this magnet icon, and this ensures that the mesh is used as a template, and also it ensures that it won't be selectable, which is very useful. After that, I will go on over to the modeling tools quad drawer to create the topology one painstaking rectangle at a time. This process is somewhat a problem-solving task, but if it's a normal mesh like a face or a body, there are plenty of templates you can follow along, as you can see from the loops over here. This remesh will be done with whatever task you have in mind, so animating, rendering, etc. Because I'm only rendering this, I can be quite careless or just use the auto retopology like I explained before, as that's faster and more suited to my needs. Just as a disclaimer, by the way, it's always good to have well retopologized meshes in your portfolio to showcase that you actually have that knowledge. Also, a quick note, you can see the shortcuts to create the topology listed over here, but as a quick guide, you can hold down tab and drag to drag out a rectangle, tab drag on an edge to create one, and middle mouse button plus tab to drag out loops. You can control click, which will add loops, while control shift click will delete loops or polygons. You can also control how far the polygons are from the mesh by adjusting the live constraint surface offset slider over here. This is actually pretty useful and you will want to make use of it. As another general rule, you want the retopologized mesh to resemble the original high poly mesh when you smooth it out like this. Basically, it needs to follow a smooth flowing pattern around the mesh, resembling a simplified version and not look like a bunch of haphazard rectangles and squares. The back and forth of 3D. So just a quick note before we move on to the unwrapping. The nature of any 3D pipeline, or any pipeline really, is pretty much going back and forth on things like retopology, modeling, baking, and even texturing. What I mean by this is that no matter how experienced you are, you will have to go back to retopologize something because you realize the baking has shown holes in your topology, or going back to texturing because you realize your renders are showing that the colors are lighter than you wanted, etc. Each step iterates and also supports the previous and even next step. So don't think you're going to flow from modeling to retopology to texturing without backtracking and correction. A lot of tutorials don't mention this, and so everyone thinks it's just a smooth ride across each step. It really isn't, so keep this in mind when you make mistakes because everyone does it. Unwrapping and UV. Another great reason for good topology is that it makes unwrapping way easier. Unwrapping refers to cutting the retopologized mesh in the UV space to lay out flat so that it will be easier to texture, bake, and lay out in general. Think of this process like printing out decals for 3D objects like the Easter Bunny chocolates or cars. The design has to be printed out on a flat piece of material before being applied to the 3D object. This is what unwrapping is for. It works out this before it's applied to something three-dimensional. In Maya, I will start to cut the mesh so that it is easier to unwrap. Here are two examples of unwrapped faces. One has no cuts and the other has a few cuts so that there is less distortion when texturing. With Maya, you can have a few panels opened and you can have one set to UV like this. Just a few notes on cutting UVs. This face only has one cut along the back of the head, so it can be laid out flat in one place. The downside here is that there is more distortion when it is laid out, as the ears, nose and lips only have so much space to be laid flat. The upside is that it's one piece with no extra stuff to worry about. Now here we see multiple cuts and splits. People usually tell you not to cut and split too much, but with today's tech and 3D unwrapping and painting, it's not so bad. But yes, more cuts, aka seams, can lead to more problems if you're not careful. This is the opposite of the last one, as the pieces have more space to stretch and lay out. So as a general rule, more cuts equals less distortion plus islands and sometimes more problems. Less cuts equals less hassle, but also less space for the islands to stretch out and more opportunity for distortion. Distortion can be read by placing a quick texture on the unwrapped parts like this in Maya or like this in Blender. If you see squares, you're pretty much all set, but any distorted pieces will show as a rectangle or diamonds, and these will usually need straightening. Sometimes you can't help this, but just as a general rule, try to keep them square. It isn't always the case, and sometimes, especially with hard surface models, you will want to lay out the islands in a way that makes texturing easier, but will also distort your UVs on purpose, so it's a give and take of what you might want. When you lay out these islands, you don't want them to touch or hit the edges of the tiles, but you also want them to take up as much space as possible without touching each other, so it's really a balancing act. It's definitely easier to lay out hard surface stuff as you're basically dealing with squares and rectangles, but depending on what you want, you will have to find which layouts work best for you and the project. Oh yeah, and one more quick thing, the islands can't touch or overlap the main grid lines, or else the baking will throw an error, and this also applies for the islands themselves touching one another. This is a very common error, like having 5 or more sided polygons and open areas that aren't welded even though they should be, so look out for these as well. Also, once the mesh is unwrapped, if you want to add more loops or vertices to the mesh, you will have to re-unwrap the pieces you added to, so be careful. It's not really something you want to do as a beginner, but usually as a beginner it's kind of inevitable as you're always going back and forth more so than the professional. Baking and texturing. Now, baking involves taking the high poly mesh and imprinting that information onto the low poly or the retopologized mesh. This is what we've been working so hard for. This process is the culmination of the last 2 steps and involves going back and forth like I explained. Before we bake, let's quickly set up the mesh. First, we need to apply a standard material to all the pieces that share a UV tile. For this, we only have one mesh, the head, which I will create a material called head to apply to it. Now, if we had other meshes that were in this UV island, or UV tile rather, I would also apply this material to it. Now, this convention is an easy way to identify and select meshes in the same group. So think of this as grouping meshes that share the same UV space together. Now, this helps us visually and helps the programs digitally to identify these pieces and group them together. Next, I will make sure that the naming is correct. The naming usually works by naming all the low poly stuff _low and all the high poly stuff _high. So here I have a head _low and head _high. This tells Substance what to bake on what when you have multiple meshes. Now, given that we only have one, we don't need to worry about this, but Substance will show you if the meshes are mismatched, and also it's good practice even if you only have one mesh. But if you mess up the naming, that can cause issues. But luckily, most 3D programs have batch naming conventions that you can use. There are other ways to bake, and I usually prefer marmoset, but here I'll use Substance as we will use it to texture as well. So first you'll need a mesh, the retopologized mesh, the low poly mesh we've been using this whole time, to load into Substance. If the mesh has no UVs or the UVs aren't in order, like they're overlapping for example, Substance usually won't load the mesh, so to be sure, check these beforehand. After that, I will start some test bakes to see if the mesh is in good order. For this, we will need another mesh, the high poly version of your head. Also, again, the naming is very important. Like I said before, Substance will show if the naming is off over here. And another note on the high poly mesh, you don't have to decimate it, but sometimes if it's too big, you can decimate it a little bit. But don't go overboard, as we don't want to see all the amazing details you applied disappear due to decimation. So just be careful with that. If you can help it, try to keep it undecimated, but at most I'd say go to 10, maybe 20%, and again you can zoom in and out of the mesh to see how much it has actually taken away from your details, but be very careful on this. Now, once I have identified that the bake looks good and the mesh doesn't need any changes, I'll go ahead and bake the mesh finals at 4K or 2K depending on what I need for the necessary maps, so normal, thickness, curvature, wall space, etc. And just a quick note on baking, the Marmoset website has some really cool explanations of each map type and what you need or should use, so definitely check that one out. And one thing you need to play around with no matter the bake program is the distance of the bake. This will show how much it's going to capture of the high poly to bake onto the low poly. So if it's too high a number, it might bake other parts of the mesh onto itself, and if it's too low, it won't catch enough detail. This will also have you go back and forth on the low poly mesh to add loops to better accommodate the bake. This cage is derived from the low poly mesh, by the way. And up next, the exciting part, texturing. So this part requires quite a bit of knowledge regarding color, skin, height information, etc. There's really the understanding of the face that will drive the work being done. If you are clueless in that regard, like the anatomy knowledge for sculpting, then this step will be quite the drag. So let's take it one step at a time and move from there. Pre-planning. So first up, I'll start with some mask templates. For those of you who haven't used Substance before, using masks here is even more important than using it in Photoshop. And just like Photoshop, it helps a ton. So what I'll do here is create basic masks for the parts of the face that will need to be selected often, like the areas around the eyes, the cheeks, the ears, so on and so forth. Pre-painting and assigning masks to these areas will make them a lot easier to select and paint later. So for this, I'll simply create a full, add a black mask to it, and then a paint layer onto the mask, and I will then paint on the mask's paint layer, not the mask itself. This is very important, so let me say that again. I will create a full layer, add a black mask to it, and then a paint layer on the black mask onto which I will paint. The paint layer, not the black mask. So you can see it over here what I'm doing. Now over here the color is green so that I can see what I'm painting, but after this I will right click on the mask and save it as a smart mask to use later as a mask for the nose if I need to select that area again more easily. I will do this again for each part of the face, like the eyes, the outer eyes, the cheeks, the chin, the lips, the ears, so on and so forth, just to make it way easier for me to select and paint around. Doing this every time you need to paint the ears or the eyes or the chin can be quite the nightmare, so doing it once over here and setting it up might seem tedious, but it will save you a lot more time in the long run. Finally, adding color. Now here I'll start to add the base colors that make up the face, so the lighter pink brown as a base, redder areas for the areas that gather more blood like the nose tip, ears, eye sockets, etc. Yellower areas for the bony protrusions, and each color, by the way, is on a different layer for better control. I'll add secondary and tertiary colors to really boost the liveliness of the skin, so freckles, red splotches, darker areas, blue-green areas for the stubble, etc. This stage, as you can imagine, relies heavily on your understanding of the colors and also the layering system in Substance. Now as you'll notice as well, the colors are all in one folder, and the other aspects like the roughness, the SSS, etc. are on different layers for better control and manageability. So basically what I'll do is I'll switch on the color just for the colors layer, or the roughness just for the roughness layer, and switch everything else off by alt clicking on the one that I want. Now I didn't really discuss things like roughness, height, SSS, etc. but just know that all these things work great with variation and breakup of the application of these things. So like the bumps I'm adding here, or the roughness I'm adding over here. The same mentality goes for color and even texturing hard surface models. Breakup and variation will boost your realism and believability. So make sure to look out for this anytime you're trying for realism, and even for stylized objects they also make use of this level of breakup and variation. There's obviously more to cover here, but this is just an overview. You can check the full tutorial out, which I will link later on when I'm actually finished with it. But for now, like I said, this is just an overview, and I'm also just breezing through the parts that can be quickly explained or searched, like the coloring and sculpting parts. And lastly, we have the overview of rendering. Now this has a bunch of things to worry about, so I'll just go through the basic stuff. Now first, I'll set up a quick studio, a cylinder, bevel that, delete any unnecessary faces, flip the normals, and then smooth that to create some sort of platform or staging. Now this is very simple, nothing too fancy. After that I will add a few lights, a main light or a key light, a secondary or a fill light, and a rim light to highlight the shadow side. I'll also add a light to vignette the background. Now there are a ton of ways to light a person, and I suggest looking at some ways to do that, but here is a quick guide for it. We have bottom or horror lighting, we've got softbox or fashion lighting, front lighting, Rembrandt lighting, split lighting. As you can see, there's quite a few, and each one creates a mood that elevates and goes with the theme of the sculpt. So don't just blindly choose a setup without experimenting first and knowing what you want to achieve. Oh yeah, for this I'm using AI and Maya lights for better lighting with the renderer, found over here under Arnold and lighting. The default ones are found over here, by the way. And there are other things we can add to really push the scene, like focal lengths, depths of field, fog, etc. But I think you will start to push those things once you are ready for it and a little bit more comfortable to move into that. But for now, I think I'll leave it over here, and if you have any questions or want to learn more, please feel free to leave a comment. Check out my Discord, my website, my blog, my paid tutorials, all that good stuff. Leave a like if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and again, I'll see you in the next one.